Good afternoon. Welcome to the National Fallen Firefighters Connect series. My name is Ian Bennett, and I'm the National Local Assistant State Team Coordinator for the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation. And it's the fourth Thursday of each month, which we're doing the Connect series for the Uniformed Outreach Programs. And we'll be talking about the Incident Commander Program again. Just a couple things. There will be no other videos other than the speaker and myself, and everybody will be muted for the time being. If you have any questions or anything, use the chat function at the bottom of the Zoom screen, and you can send me a message directly, and I can comments or questions I can get to Chief Raynis when we get to that. So a little bit about the Incident Commander program. When a line of duty death occurs, department personnel go through different feelings, emotions, situations specific to their position. And only someone that has gone through that actual position for a line of duty death knows how that was and can outreach to that individual. So we created the Incident Commander program for just that purpose. For an incident commander that loses a firefighter in line of duty, we can match him up with another incident commander that has experienced the same thing and help them through the process. Similar to the chief-to-chief network we already have, we're working through a company officer-to-company officer program and have also a small version of the coworker-to-coworker program. So you can go to our website, firehero.org, and have more information on all of that. A little bit about our speaker today, our facilitated discussion, is Chief Steve Raynis. Chief, thanks for being here today. Chief was instrumental in assisting with the development of this IC-to-IC program. He retired as Assistant Chief from the FDNY in 2018 with 37 years in the fire service. He was a member of the executive staff serving as the Chief of Safety, Health and Safety Officer for the department for 6 years. And then following his tenure as a Health and Safety Officer, Chief Raynis moved to the Bureau of Training as the Chief of Training for 2 years, and finally to the Bureau of Communications as the Chief Fire Dispatch Operations, working on a new CAD system for the FDNY prior to his retirement. He remains active in the fire service as an instructor for the Fire Department Safety Officers Association, teaching Health and Safety Officer and Incident Safety Officer classes in preparation for Pro Board certification. And he's a facilitator and a participant with our IC-to-IC program, been with us beginning the development of this program. So, Steve, thanks for being with us here. Let me unmute you real quick here.
Okay, you got me?
Yep, I got you now.
Okay.
And, all right, let's get this rolling as far as. All right, on your screen, you'll see the Deutsche building. And on August 18th, 2007, a 7-alarm fire broke out in the Deutsche building. This was a 26-story high-rise, which was under deconstruction at the time and abatement. And it killed 2 firefighters and injuring 115 more. And Chief Raynis was the incident commander on this scene. And we're happy to have you here today, Chief, to talk about the incident. So I appreciate it. So.
All right. Well, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here, Ian. And really happy to support this IC-to-IC program that the NFFF is promoting.
Excellent. So, Chief, let's start with telling us a little about the firefighters that were killed in the incident. Who were they? What do you want people to know about these two?
All right. I was fortunate enough to work with both of them for about 6 years while I was a battalion chief in Battalion 2 in Greenwich Village, New York City. We shared the same quarters. They were in 94 and Ladder 5. And I knew them well. They were good people, and we had a lot of laughs together. We shared meals together. In fact, the night before the fire, we shared a meal in the quarters with 24-5 and with the 2nd Battalion. Good people. Bobby Badia was a 24-year veteran in Engine 24. He was the senior man. In fact, he was the seated chauffeur. We knew that Bobby was going to get us to the incident quickly and efficiently and safely. And then when the nozzle team wanted water, he'd have water for them. He was very reliable. He was a great chauffeur, great man. He was also the captain's chauffeur. And as the captain of a house, you get to pick the best. And he picked Bobby. But Bobby was there for them. He was also a mentor. He was there for the younger firefighters. He was teaching them. He made sure they knew their job. His goal was to make them better. He was terrific. And then he was also a family man. Although he didn't have any children of his own, but he was an uncle, a godfather, and all the children in his family wanted to be with Bobby. He was Uncle Bobby, and he was just like a kid himself. They all loved being with him. Joey was an 8-year. Joey Raffanino was an 8-year veteran. He started out in Engine 24. Eventually, he transferred to Ladder 5 because he was on the lieutenant's promotional list. He was going to get promoted soon. He wanted to have the experience in a ladder company. So we moved across the floor. Luckily, Ladder 5 was in the same quarters as the engine and the battalion, so we didn't lose him. He was still part of the team. We still work with him every day. He was a step-up guy. He was the first to step up to cook the meals. In fact, he was a bodybuilder, and he made sure that we had healthy meals with a good dose of protein. We made sure he did that. He was also the first to step up to do committee work. He wanted to make sure that the house was clean, the house looked good, because it reflected on the firefighters there. He always set the example. He was the first one up, first one to do things. But the most important to him was to make sure the apparatus was ready to respond. He knew every tool on the rig. He knew where it was. He'd make sure all the equipment was ready to go. And he was the guy who made sure that was working. He was also a family man. I was married to his wife, Linda, with 2 beautiful children, Mia Rose and Joseph. They were babies at the time. They're teenagers now, and I'm sure they miss them. I think of them often. We were not only colleagues, but we were friends, and they made the ultimate sacrifice for the New York City residents and for us.
Hey, Chief, I got a picture you share with us here that you see on the screen now for the 2 firefighters. So let's just take a moment of silence in recognition of the 2. All right, thank you. All right, Chief, tell us about the day of the incident, a little bit about what happened on that day, how the day started and how it progressed.
Okay, I was detailed from Battalion 2 that morning to Division 1, which had a vacancy, and I was an acting deputy chief for the tour. It was a beautiful sunny afternoon, up until 15:30 hours when the nightmare began. 15:30 hours, around that time is when the Manhattan dispatcher started receiving numerous calls for fire in a high-rise building. They sent out a response matrix, which was 4 engines, 2 ladder companies, a rescue company, a squad company, a battalion, and a hazmat unit. And I know that's resource rich, and the fire department, FDNY, is resource rich. But when you fight a fire in a high-rise building, you need every resource you can get. They responded. Within minutes, they were on the scene. They transmitted a working fire. Then I was assigned as the deputy chief of the division to respond into the fire. Shortly after that, as I was responding, they transmitted a second alarm because fire was showing through the skin of the building. So I knew we were going to have our hands full, and I knew the building. Listen, fighting high-rise fires is challenging, it's hazardous, but there are things in place. There are building codes in place. There are fire codes in place. We have SOPs. And most times when we fight a high-rise fire, we could mitigate the incident we can mitigate the fire without much incident. But at this fire, things were different. The building codes weren't complied with. The building was damaged on 9/11. So what happened was they did a temporary repair and they sealed up the building for years. And it sat there for years. Mold was growing inside and it just sat there. In early 2007, the Deutsche Bank sold the building to the Manhattan Lower Development Company, and a decision was made to demolish the building. But to demolish the building, they had to do asbestos abatement and clean out all the mold in there. So it was a challenging endeavor, and because of that, a lot of those building codes we spoke about were not in compliance. The fire codes were not in compliance. So we couldn't follow our SOPs for high-rise buildings because none of the systems that we need were available. The sprinkler system was out of service. The standpipe system was out of service. There was no fire command station. All the elevators were sealed shut. They were removed and sealed shut. The stairway enclosures were removed. They were planked over with wood and covered with plastic and sealed above and below. There was only an exterior elevator to reach the outside. And then with the, as part of that asbestos abatement issue, we had decontamination structures on each floor, which was a small private dwelling on each floor. They were 26 by 26, made out of plywood for the workers when they finished their decontaminate, when they would finish with their asbestos removal. They would go in and take showers. They had a sitting room. So we had that on each floor, which is, like I said, a small private dwelling. In fact, that's where the fire started, on the 17th floor. One of the workers discarded a cigarette and the fire began there. In addition to that, we had exhaust fans with ductwork extending to the outside to keep a negative pressure in the building, which we weren't aware of at the time. So because of the damage on 9/11 and the issues with not having fire protection systems, we weren't able to follow our SOPs. Because of the out of service standpipe system, we had trouble getting water. We were feeding the Siamese. We were trying to feed the first floor, and we couldn't get water up to the upper floors. Eventually, we found out, long into the fire, was that a 42-foot piece of piping for the standpipe was missing in the basement, and all the water we were pouring into the standpipe system was just filling up the basement. So that made it very difficult. Eventually, we had to stretch a hose line up the outside of the building, up to the 14th floor, to get water to that area. In addition, there was a maze of plywood and plastic that the firefighters had to navigate in order to get into the fire area, or at least to access the stairways to access the firewood. So there was a myriad of problems. The firefighters and a lot of companies were trying to breach the stairway enclosures, which was very difficult. It was time consuming. It was difficult to do. And all this time while we were trying to get water and while we were trying to breach those stairwells, the fire was expanding, and it was growing and growing and growing. Eventually, the firefighters worked valiantly to try to do that, and eventually they did do it. But an hour and 15 minutes into the fire, we had what the firefighters described was a black curtain of hot black smoke just descend upon everybody immediately. And in a couple of seconds, the whole area was just filled with black. Firefighters were disoriented, members were missing, members were trapped. And that's when the Maydays began. We ended up having 14 Maydays and 19 urgents. Anyone who's an incident commander would know what it would be like at that command post at that time. It was extremely difficult. Luckily, Tommy Galvin, who was the assistant chief on tour that day, he took over command shortly before the Maydays. We worked together, and he said, listen, I'll take care of the Maydays, you handle the fire. But handling the fire was trying to get the members to evacuate and account for them. It was a difficult time. Just as we thought we had a handle on the Maydays, another Mayday came in for Engine 24, having 2 missing members. That was tough. Our rescue company was up there at the time. They were ordered to go search for them. They pushed in, even though they were exhausted at this time, because we've been working for over an hour now. They ended up finding Joey. They dragged him out to the lobby area. It's not really a lobby, but outside the elevators, and started CPR. They brought him down into the elevator, brought him to an ambulance, and he was transported to the hospital. We still had Bobby missing, so they went back in. They searched for Bob. They found him. They brought him out, again, CPR. They put him in the elevator. When they reached the ground, there was a department physician there. He took over the CPR on Bobby. They put him in an ambulance and had him to the nearest hospital. But unfortunately, both succumbed to their injuries at the time, and we lost Joey and Bobby. Just for brevity's sake, I just I went over this fire briefly, because there's a lot that happened. We could have lost a lot of members at this fire. So if anybody's interested, NIOSH has an excellent report. I recommend it. We can learn from it. We all have buildings in our districts that are being constructed and demolished and asbestos abatement. And I think we could learn from this tragedy.
But Chief, about how many firefighters total were at the fire at its peak point?
Oh, hundreds, over 200 for sure. Yeah, because we had 115 of them who were injured. So, and then we lost 2 members.
All right, we have a couple pictures to share with us. I'll share real quick here.
Okay.
All right, they're up on the screen here. If you want to talk us through this one.
Sure. This is the seaside of the building where the fire was first reported. Originally, it came in as fire on a scaffolding because I had that netting on the outside. Wasn't until the first units arrived that they realized it was more than just the scaffolding, that it was from the inside of the building. And this is the location where those decontamination structures were built. So, like we said, we started in a decon shell structure, and this is where the fire first showed.
Okay. And then this picture.
Okay, this is the A side. This is, as you can see, in the slightly to the left of the photo is the construction elevator. That was the only way we were able to get inside and outside of the building. So even when we tried to evacuate, just that construction elevator was the only way to get down. When we tried to get below the 14th floor, when that black curtain dropped, they couldn't use the stairs because the stairs were sealed over. So members had to get into that elevator to get down. Some of the floors had, as you see in the scaffolding, had stairways from one floor to the other. So there were members that were able to exit onto the scaffolding and get down to a floor below. But it was a little dangerous doing that because there was a 4-foot gap between the end of the building and where the scaffolding started. So that was a dangerous operation for members, but they needed to get out of that area. So.
Okay, and then we have this one, show some of the damage.
Yeah, this is the damage post 9/11 when the South Tower collapsed. A section of it struck 130 Liberty, which was the Deutsche Bank. And as you could see, there was severe damage there. So temporary repairs were made. They built some Q decking in that front of the building, which is where our operations really were conducted from. And, you know, following those repairs, the building was sealed up for years. We didn't go back.
And the last picture we have here, I guess, is the aftermath.
Yeah, this is an early picture of the 38-story, 130 Liberty Street Deutsche building. I was a battalion chief in the area prior to 9/11, and I was in this building many a times. It was state-of-the-art, beautiful building. Everything worked properly. But you know, after those terrorist attacks and the building being severely damaged, all those systems that were in place were no longer available to us.
All right, that's all the pictures. We'll come back here.
Okay.
There we go. Do have one question for you, Chief. How many other officers were available at the command post to assist with managing the Mayday and the fire between you and the other chief that were managing the Mayday? Were there other officers available for that?
Oh, absolutely. We had a battalion chief as a resource unit leader. He was there to help track the units, where they are, who they were, where they were working. We had an attack chief who was able to go up to the fire area and supervise operations on the fire floor. And there were a number of the chiefs that when we were having a water problem, we were able to get one of our chief officers to try to solve that water problem and find out where this water was going and why we were having a problem. Our safety officer wasn't at the scene originally. He was at another incident in the Bronx. So it took a while for that safety officer to get there. So we had another temporary safety officer that was working with us. So we did have some other chiefs that were available to assist us, but it was a big building and a lot was going on, and everybody was extremely busy.
Okay. One other question: at what point in the fire did you know about the standpipe? You talked about that piece of pipe missing and then filling up the basement. At what point of the fire did you realize that that was an issue?
That wasn't until almost an hour into the fire. because we kept getting information from the building people on the scene saying that, yes, the standpipe works, you can charge it, you can hook it up here. And every time we tried, it didn't work. And we were looking and we were trying to trace the riser, thinking that maybe there was a broken riser and we could supply water above that break, shut it down with an isolation valve and move on. But again, the break was in the basement and we couldn't do anything about it. One of the standpipes they did have working, but they only had that used as with a garden hose for the construction workers to wet things down. So that wasn't functional for us.
Okay. All right, it's been almost 13 years since the incident. What do you want today's firefighters to know about that incident? Lessons learned from that?
That it was a tragedy. We lost 2 good men. Families lost loved ones, and we need to learn from that. We need to do something so it doesn't happen again. So what I recommend is that we be prepared for the unexpected. Make sure you know your buildings thoroughly. Make sure they're complying with the fire code. Make sure they're complying with the building code. Make sure that if there's an issue, we get it fixed immediately. You have to issue a violation or a summons or whatever, because that's our lifeline. That's what we need to protect us. If we're having issues, we have to stop what we're doing and regroup. We may have to change our strategy. We may have to change our tactics, but we need to regroup. We can't keep throwing a ball against something that's not working. So that's important. We gotta, if plan A is not working, let's see what plan B is. And we have to have that in the back of our head. Team concept, I can't stress that more. Have a buddy, never work by yourself, always be with somebody else. Because conditions may be fine now, but in a moment's notice, it changes. And you need that buddy to help each other. SCBA policy and procedures and all that stuff is extremely, extremely important. When this fire happened and that black curtain came down like we spoke of, our CO alarms pinned or maxed out at 999 parts per million. So we know it was more than that. Without a Don face piece, without a functioning SCBA, you're not going to survive that environment. Strict adherence to SCBA policy is extremely important. And we have to keep learning. We have to learn from other fires. We have to learn our entire career. It's not just for the new recruit coming in to learn how to be a firefighter. It's to be a firefighter, learn throughout your career as an officer, learn throughout your career as a chief officer, learn throughout your career. Never stop learning, because those that lied before us are paving the way for us, and we have to honor them by being great at our job and really doing what has to be done to make it safe for them out there.
All right, there's a question on the fuel load. You talked about the little plywood rooms and those kind of things. Was any additional fuel load in the building?
There was a lot of demolition debris throughout the building. Most of it was stripped clear, but there were holes throughout the floors. There were debris piled up, and like I said, the structures for the decon it was like having a small private dwelling on each floor. That was a pretty high fire load. And then the plastic sheeting that was hanging there and the planking over the stairs. So there was quite a bit. The delay in water and the delay of getting access caused incipient fires to start in the other decontamination areas, and we couldn't do anything about it. So it just caused the fire to expand, and there was nothing we could do to stop it.
Okay. Ready. Tell us some changes that were implemented in the agency after this tragedy.
Okay. After this happened, the department initiated additional training for all firefighters and chief officers on SCBA usage and managing members in distress. That was key at this fire, handling all those maydays and making sure that our SCBA policies were being followed. So that still continues today, 13 years later. We do annual training on it. We've honed our skills, and I think we're better for it. Another big change that came across was the location of the emergency alert button on our radios. At the time of the fire, the emergency alert button was on the body of the radio, and it was under our coat. So if you got in trouble and you wanted to transmit a mayday and hit the emergency alert button, it was very difficult to get to your radio under your coat and then press it with a gloved hand. At the time, we were doing a pilot program to move the emergency alert button to the remote mic. And it was happening in some parts of the city, but it wasn't happening in this area. Once this fire happened, we expedited the program, and every radio in the city was equipped with a remote emergency alert button on our remote mics. Also, notifications procedures were changed. The buildings department was required to notify the fire department for any buildings that were being constructed or demolished. The EPA had to let us know if there was any asbestos removals happening, so we would be aware of what's going on. We also put in place procedures to ensure that our buildings that were being demolished or constructed that were 75 feet or higher were inspected every 15 days. That's an enormous task for the units in the city. It was very difficult to do. The department also established separate units that would go out and assist the local units to do these type of inspections, so they weren't left out to do this all on their own. In addition, they developed another unit called the BISP unit, which stands for the Building Inspection Safety Program unit, which was a resource for the units in the field. So it was kind of like a hotline. If you were on the field and you came across something that you knew wasn't right, but you weren't sure what the regulations were or what the laws were, you can get on your cell phone, you can call this unit, they would look it up for you, it was at their fingertips, and you were able to comply and enforce any violations were out there. That was a big help to the units, and that inspections that we do now every 15 days on buildings under construction and demolition, we stay on top of things now.
You mentioned the inspections. Were there any other local or state codes that came out of this tragedy?
Well, the mayor's office put a task force together with the buildings department, with the fire department, with EPA, with construction companies to ensure
Froze here. Okay, we'll get the chief back here in just a second. Yeah, get you unmute bottom left there, chief, and then we got you back. Try now.
Okay, how about now?
Yep, we got you now. So
okay,
right at the inspection part.
we timed out.
We did. Yep.
No, I'm not aware of any new laws that came out because of it. Just that we are on top of them now. Okay. And we were going to be notified of any violations or any code violations that were happening.
Yep. Good deal. Do you do any pre-plans now of buildings under construction? I'm sure there's a pre-plan of the building. Does that get updated now with under construction and abatement and those types of things?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a pre-planning program where the local units go out, they inspect the building, they mark the locations of the Siamese and where the access is and the elevators and any hazardous material that may be in the building. And we keep that on our intranet, so it's available to all units and to anybody throughout the whole job if they want to look at another building. So, and that's updated annually whenever the companies go out to do another inspection, or if they do that 15-day inspection and they see a problem or a change, they update the plan. So that's we stay on top of that. Yes.
One other question from the operational standpoint, was there an internal report done? You mentioned the NIOSH report. Was there an internal report done as well from the FDNY?
Yes, there was. Our safety command initiated the report. It took a month, but it was delayed coming out because of a criminal investigation with the assistant district attorney. So anything that we were able to ascertain from the fire, we shared with the district attorney.
Is that available publicly, or is that an internal document?
It's an internal document. That's why I recommended the NIOSH report. Okay,
sounds great. All right. How did the department regain its confidence after the incident? Obviously, this took a toll. What actions did it take, and what measures did it take for that?
Okay. I don't think we lost our confidence. The department's been through a lot. We had great leadership at the time, and we know mistakes were made, and there were problems with the system. So, like I described before, the changes we made, we fixed the system, and we try to stay on top of it. It's a never-ending battle to make sure that it's safe out there for the firefighters and the people in New York. But again, we didn't lose confidence. We just made sure that we fixed it, and that's it.
Okay. Tell us a little bit about, you told us about the day of the incident. What kind of experiences did you go through as the incident was unfolding?
It was a difficult day for me. I knew we had serious problems with the water and the stairways blocked. I didn't have the information about the fans and how things were blocked and where the fire was extending. But I believe we were going to overcome those obstacles. We had people working on finding that water source. I knew we were making progress on those blocked stairways. But as the fire was progressing and extending, anxiety and frustration was really mounting upon me. It was getting difficult. Then when the Mayday started and the urgent messages and there was radio traffic, people were stepping on each other. I felt like I was going down that slippery slope. Luckily we had great people on the scene. They were working hard. They did a phenomenal job to slow that slope down to get control. So, people were self-evacuating, missing members were being located. Those that were disoriented were found and helped out. So we finally were getting a handle on it, and I felt a little better. And then the Engine 24 Maydays came in that they were missing 2 members. And that was difficult. Like I said, I knew them both really well, and it doesn't matter who it is, but when you know somebody, it really hits home. When they removed Bobby, when they removed Joey first, and then finally Bobby came out, my heart sank. I felt like I let him down, and it was a difficult time.
How about some things that you may have experienced in the aftermath of the incident, some things you had to go through?
Following the fire, it was a whirlwind. First of all, there was a lot of finger pointing. Who was to blame? Was the FDNY to blame? Was the New York City Building Department to blame? Was it the Manhattan Lower Development Corporation to blame? Was it Bovis Lend-Lease, who was the manager of the building? Or was it the construction company, John Galt? Everybody was pointing fingers at the other guy. But in the meantime, we lost 2 people, and 2 really, really good people. That was difficult. The memorial services, they're very emotional. They take a toll on you. And then we had to have 2 funerals and 2 memorial services. Again, made it very, very difficult afterwards. Then, like I said, the DA was doing a criminal investigation. The press was all over. I had the press sitting outside my house waiting for me to come out. They all wanted an interview. And it wasn't just me, it was everybody that they wanted to get information from people in the fire department. But we could only tell them what we knew, and that there was an investigation going on. A lot of interviews. Like I said before, we were doing our own internal investigation. The OSHA unit for New York State was doing interviews. The NIOSH people were doing interviews, and the DA was doing interviews. So you know, our legal department, New York City Legal was doing interviews, trying to get as much information as they could. And there was remorse, terrible remorse. You know, what could we have done to prevent this? Luckily, we have an excellent counseling service unit, and they were extremely useful to me and to a lot of members of the department. Extremely useful. And then we had to figure out how we're going to get back to work and get into a normal routine, because you have to move on and you have to put it behind you, but you can never forget. So that's what it was like for me. It wasn't easy and it took time, but you know, we did it, and we moved on. But we never forget Joe and Bobby.
You mentioned that the New York Counseling, the Fire Department Counseling Services. Was there anything particular they did for the crew and the members that day, or was it just a referral to them, or?
There were a lot of options. We have peer counselors, retired firefighters and officers who are trained as peer counselors. So they come down, they come to the firehouses, they talk, and we're all familiar with them because post 9/11, post the terrorist attacks, they used to come visit firehouses on a regular basis. And hey, here's my card. If you ever want to call me, you know, I'm available. So it wasn't like a stranger in a white coat showing up and said, you got any issues or problems? It was people that we know and could understand what we're going through. So the peer counselors were there for us. They were very helpful. And if we needed additional help, we can call the counseling unit. They would take us offline, and we would see a counselor at their unit. And if we needed more help past that, we could see a psychologist or psychiatrist. So it's a tiered approach, starting with the peer counseling, and then it moves all the way up to the medical people. Excellent unit, and I have to give the NFFF a shout out because they're one of the ones that helps fund this organization. So thank you. Yeah.
You mentioned the crew's getting back to work. You know, tell us a bit about you as an incident commander. You know, the next call you ran as an incident commander, was that tough? How did you get back in the swing of that?
It wasn't easy, but it takes faith and it takes time. You also need the support of both, of all three. You need support of your superiors. You need trust from your superiors. You need support from your peers and trust from your superiors, your peers, and also your subordinates, the people below you, the boots on the ground. Do they still trust you? Do they believe in you? Will they support you? And they did, and they will. Great people, great firehouse. And without them, it would have been difficult to move on, but we're able to do that. So, and not only trust in your superiors, your peers, and your subordinates, but you have to have trust in yourself. You have to say, hey, I can do this. I've done it before, and I can do it again. You know, bad things happen to good people, and I say that all the time. And you know, we gotta make sure it doesn't happen again. That's our goal.
So what advice would you give to officers and firefighters who may have to deal with the loss of one of their own?
Okay. First of all, you know, we all have to realize that it can happen. It can happen to you, happen to us, and it's going to happen again. But if it does happen, we can't dwell on the line of duty death. We have to do everything we can to make it better. We have to make sure that it doesn't happen again. And I think participating in this program, this IC to IC program, and then the future program you have going, the company officer to company officer program, to deal with the line of duty death when it occurs are excellent. And I highly recommend that everyone out there participates in the program, learns about what it's like, what can happen. We had a tremendous team put together to put this program together. And it's going to help anybody who goes through the same thing that we went through. And again, you have to count on your department, and you have to count on your fellow firefighters and their officers. That's key. And remember that you can't do it alone. Nobody does things alone. We all work together.
Excellent. That concludes the facilitated discussion. Chief, is there anything you'd like to add at the end of this?
Yeah, just keep Bobby and Joey in your thoughts and prayers, and all of those that we've lost through the past years. And let's work hard to prevent this from ever happening again.
Chief, I can't thank you enough for being here today and sharing that with. I got quite a few comments as we go through this. Just really appreciating you taking your time and sharing your experiences with us.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Outstanding. Just a reminder that we're doing this every fourth Thursday. We did it the one in May, I guess June or in April, the end of April. Chief Eric Cryer from Prescott and the Yarna Hill Fire lost 19 firefighters. That and this one recordings will be available on the NFFFirehero.org website on the Connect series. I invite you to take a look at those and pass them on to your crews and your departments to share this as well. June 25th will be the next one. And Chief Mike Washington from Cincinnati Fire Department will be talking about a Kings Tower apartment fire. A firefighter was lost in a multi-story apartment fire. So that'll be June 25th, again at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So thank you all for being with us. I really appreciate the participation. Chief, once again, thank you very much for sharing your story. And I hope you all have a great day. Thank you.
Good, sir. Thank you, Ian.
Take care, sir.